I have a letter from Jackie Poirier from the cemetery, who is the cemetery superintendent, dated December 7th, 2016. Dear Mayor DiNatale, I am requesting your approval of the following expenditure at the special meeting of the cemetery trustees held on Tuesday, December 6th. The following motions were adopted, 5 board members present. A motion was made by Phil Jordan and seconded by Andrew Hawthorne to allow an expenditure from perpetual care expendable interest account for the amount of $5,985 from Surfside Fence Company for 350 feet by 4 feet galvanized chain link fence to be installed on the Electric Avenue side of Forest Hill Cemetery. 5 in favor, 0 were opposed. Motion passed. A motion was made by Judy Perla and seconded by Diane Ouellette to allow an expenditure from perpetual care expendable interest account for the amount of $13,950 from Gerard Fence Company for 780 feet of 4 feet black chain link fence to be installed on the Mount Elam side of Forest Hill Cemetery. 4 in favor, 1 abstained from the vote. Motion passed. Upon your approval, please pass on to the Finance Committee. Any questions, please do not hesitate to contact my office. All proposals received were bid with prevailing wage rates. Sincerely, Jackie Poirier, Cemetery Superintendent.
Make a motion to approve 286-16.
Motion made and seconded to approve 286-16. Speaking on the motion, Councilor Joseph.
Is somebody speaking to the petition?
We have a chairwoman of the Board of Trustees, Ms. Perla.
Go, jump right up there. Is this work going to be done by those 2 contractors, or is the work going to be done by DPW to install, or?
No, the installation's going to be done by the 2 contractors that we've hired, or that we're
Okay.
proposing to hire.
And why all of a sudden chain link fence around? Because there's one side isn't chain link fence, right?
Well, Section Q, which is the new section on Electric Avenue, where they're doing the new grave sites over
Okay.
there, that's going to be fenced in with the chain link fence, the galvanized fence.
Yeah.
And that's Surfside Pool's going to do that. The one that comes around the corner from Rollstone down onto Mount Elam and back to the office building in that
Yeah.
section, that's Section P, and that's going to be done by the Gerard Company. That's going to be a black chain link fence because it's going to flow with the one that's on Rollstone.
Okay. So it's just one is for, one is the existing.
One is for the Electric Avenue
Right.
side, okay?
Yeah.
And that's the new section, Section Q, that you see them grading.
Yeah.
And the other is the section that comes around the corner, Section P, from Rollstone down onto Mount Elam. And it'll come down as far as the grave sites, right? Yeah, it comes down as far as the grave sites. But then there's an opening that comes into the cemetery there by the, where the guys park their cars and everything, their trucks.
Okay. I was just wondering why they decided this time to, because it's never been fenced over there, right?
Well, I can't speak to that, to be honest with you, because I'm a new board
Right.
member. Maybe Lenny could speak to that. Jacqueline was going to be here tonight, but obviously the weather held her up.
Was there something, were they keeping?
They've wanted to do it for years, and, they finally were able to come up with the funding to do it.
Plus it also flows with the rest. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
President Kuchmarek.
What's the remaining or the current balance of the perpetual care fund?
The Perpetual Care Fund, Dick Saracen just gave it to me. We would have, after this deduction of $19,935, we'd have roughly about $42,000 in the balance.
Any other remaining items that you foresee this fiscal
Well,
year?
we do have other things coming up, but we haven't discussed them yet, so I'm the new chair right now. We haven't even elected officers for this year, so in February at our first meeting, we'll be doing that.
Understood. I think long term it'd be wonderful to see, maybe what a 5 or 10 year plan looks like in terms of some of the small capital needs. Just to get a general sense, I know some of these items, have been talked about for a long time. As you mentioned, the fencing has been, point of interest for years. It'd be great to know what other items remain on that list moving forward, and to see how we can get them done.
I'm not sure if I have the go ahead to speak to that.
Understood.
but I know that we are looking at software upgrade at some point in time for the cemetery. And I believe the long-term, and I don't even have a time frame, is across the street. We're going to be needing more space eventually. So if that becomes an option, Jacqueline is investigating some updating on the software. The software is over 20 years old, and with all the new technology out there, even for people like yourself, if you want to come and find a grave, the GPS coordinates and all of that, the software can help with that. But we haven't even discussed it yet. It's just something she's brought up that she'd like to see done. So, and as far as any other things in the cemetery, the mausoleum was still waiting on. Monty Tech that's been put on hold.
Yeah, they have a lot of
Monty
projects.
Tech is in the process of doing the veterinarian clinic, so all of the outside projects have kind of been on hold. So that's one other thing that we're looking at to keep going at.
Great. Thank you.
I have a motion and second to approve 28616. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Counselors, if you don't mind, I'd like to skip over 28716 and go to 01017, so since Mr. Laxo is here, I don't want to hold him up. In order, there being hereby is appropriated $50,000, same to be credited to DPW Highway General Expenses, right-of-way takings, and charge against available funds. Commissioner?
Yeah, you might remember that the Summer Street project has been in the planning stages for years. It's a joint project between Fitchburg, Lunenburg, and Leominster, which will reconstruct Summer Street from John Fitch Highway to Kings Corner in Leominster. The project will go out for bids this summer, but before we're allowed to go out for bids, we have to have all the easements in place. So along Summer Street in Fitchburg, there are 37 easements required. 27 of them are temporary for things like reconstructing the ends of people's driveways and just for sloping their property into the new sidewalks. Then there are 10 permanent easements for new catch basins. Right now there's wide open access along a lot of Summer Street into the various businesses, and there'll be new curb installed, and that'll kind of block the drainage from the properties from flowing into Summer Street, so we have to put in catch basins. So we need easements for those. Some of the overhead wiring is being relocated, so those require easements. And then the others are for sidewalks and for a pole to support traffic signals.
Counselor Joseph?
Have you done all of the talking with the residents already for the easements? That they already aware that there's easements required? And
We had a neighborhood meeting, and all the affected property owners were invited. Quite a few of them did show up. They've all been sent copies of the easement plans, so now it's just a matter of the appraiser coming up with a value and
okay.
and working with the property owners.
President Kuchmarek?
Mr. Chair, am I correct in remembering the city solicitor sent us a letter as well? Am I correct that they generally try to overestimate the amount necessary so that you won't be coming back to us? This is probably the amount that's, we shouldn't need additional funding beyond this to reach settlement.
Yeah, the appraiser estimated it at $42,100, but you never know what's going to happen, so Mr. Pusateri put in an estimate for $50,000 just to cover himself.
Great. And at that meeting, were there any major concerns from residents expressed with regards to any of the easements or the takings?
No, we've been working back and forth with the property owners as well as Mass DOT and the designer of the project, VHB. So, yeah, the first public hearing was held years ago, and a lot of the property owners became involved way back then. So,
How many years has this been going on, Lenny?
about 7.
Yeah, I'm sure this is a long time getting to this point, so I appreciate your due diligence getting it to finally this point. Hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel here.
Right.
Thank you.
Counselor Donnelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When this project is done, do you think that it won't be a parking lot, a snow storage spot. I mean, it's one of our widest streets. It's the entrance for, Leominster, Lunenburg, coming to Fitchburg. You drive down there now, the snow is out into this, it narrows down to one lane when it's wide enough for 2 lanes with parking. And it's been a mess for 50 years. I mean,
The width of the road is going to be narrowed.
we make rules here. To me, they're just suggestions, because they use the area, the sidewalks, the parking lane. Half the people are parking illegally. The snow is just stored there for the winter. The rest of the citizens don't get to use the right of way because of the way it's handled, particularly in the winter.
Right.
I just hope it's done. But I mean, some of the things we go to, petitions come in, we make rules and regulations. They sound like just suggestions. The people that want to obey them, and then there's no enforcement of the other stuff. Snow removal and parking is horrendous down there. I'm in favor of the project, obviously, but
The road is way too wide, so it is going to be narrowed, just for those reasons.
and as the president said, residents, there's substantially more businesses down there than residents.
Right.
So,
It is
Motion
before
to
you.
approve.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve 10-17. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. 28716, order that there be and hereby is appropriated $300,000, same to be credited to other post-employment benefits, OPEB, trust fund, and charged against available funds. Mr. Saracen, would you like to speak on this?
Sure. This is an appropriation to cover other post-employment benefits. They relate to health insurance for retirees. And it's to try to chip away at the unfunded liability. The balance in the account is a little over $260,000. A couple of years ago, the council put in PRIT, invested $250,000. We've already, saw a return of over $10,000. This appropriation, this funding will make the account balance $560,000. Any questions?
I have a question on that. So, is this an account that you can add to it any time throughout the year, or there's certain times?
You can add any time. There are certain, the money does go and get invested through PRIT, which is a state-run investment. They hold the funds like they do our retirement system, and they do an excellent job. So those monies are invested once a month, usually at the beginning of every month. So, but once it's appropriated, then the money would be put in place for the treasurer to transfer the money to the trust.
Okay, so by putting this money in there, we're more than doubling what we already have.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Counsel Joseph.
Do we have a goal on, are we looking for 100% correction to the liability, or is there a mandate of 5% of our liability, or so much per year, or what is our goal? Why are we putting $300,000 into this bucket?
Well, we don't have any formal goals. I think what we've tried to do is try to manage the benefits, which for the retirees, so that it doesn't grow. The liability, as you may, is over $100 million. It
Right.
was $180 million, and we renegotiated with the unions. The mayor and the PEC had a successful negotiation, and that brought the liability down by $50 million. So it's a moving target, but it is favorable for a community to set a goal, to try to put more money aside for this funding. And it probably will become more of an issue as more years pass, because it's only been around for about 20 years. Before that, it wasn't even discussed.
Right.
I think many communities are chipping away a small amounts, trying to get it over $1 million. I think that would be a good thing, to show a good effort. But it is a concern that bond counsel or Moody's and S&P have the rating agencies mention about the city's retirement and health insurance liability. So it's a combined effort. It's trying to work this in along with other priorities. Demolition maybe on the forefront one year, but this is a good year to put at least this amount because of our favorable available funds balance.
So I noticed that stabilization is missing from this sheet. Is there a reason why? I mean, I guess OPEB's the hot button, but are we still planning on putting money into stabilization as well?
Actually, you made a good point. It should be there. I will put it, I might have omitted it by an error, but I think it should be there, and I'm sure the mayor wants it there.
Okay.
So I will put that in there for other potential appropriation.
I guess for my own sanity's sake, I'd like to see if you're going to have a schedule on what you plan on putting into this account and an idea of what level you want to get to, or, and again, I'm not a big believer in this thing. I know that it's out there, but I know the government's not going to stop today, so that the health care will always be funded as long as we're in a current year. But I just like to know what the plan is rather than the shotgunning effect.
Right, and you're right. And one good thing is the state has been grappling with this issue. They haven't issued any
Right.
advisories to us.
Directives.
So, yeah, or suggestions.
Right.
I assume that'll be something in the future to give guidance to communities on what is a goal, because it is an issue. This is on the stabilization.
Right.
I'm sorry, on OPEB.
OPEB, right. On both, I mean, I know that we want to keep a percentage of
Right.
stabilization, but I mean, I don't think we could ever be too stable, because I think people wanted to dip into it last year already, so you can never be too stable.
Right, I think that we're trying to be at least 5% of
Right.
the budget, and we're very close to that, but, I need to put that on the schedule.
I think it was on there.
Yeah,
Several times I've
maybe
seen it on
I,
there, so, yeah.
Maybe I
that's
deleted
all
it
right.
by an error, but it should be there.
Okay,
And we'll
thank
just
you.
put it on.
Thank you.
Counselor Joseph kind of alluded to this a little bit, and I guess I'm curious on, has there been any renewed conversation at the state level in terms of providing guidance to municipalities, particularly, gateway communities or kind of peer communities, as to how they would recommend achieving that fully funded status? Additionally, do you see, has there been any talk at the state level of kind of mandatory minimums or mandatory minimum funding status? Do we foresee that we'll be in trouble in the next couple of years, in other words, or are there many others in similar situations?
I assume they'll come out with something, but they're aware that communities, some are really putting much more than we are in, and others are not. And they're cognizant of the difficulties that gateway cities have to even get to this point. One of the things that for the state, they're probably they're a partner, more of a partner in the retirement, because they pay for the teachers' retirement system. Their retirement gets paid by the state. However, the teachers in the city, their health insurance gets paid by the city, by us. So the retirement's more of their issue. They're sharing in that problem with us, covering that unfunded liability. And I think most communities are trying to really address the retirement unfunded liability, and also behind it is the OPEB. And one of the good things, if you look at the funding schedule for the retirement, you go out to 2031, 32, it drops by $20 million once we're fully funded. So that will also set aside quite a bit of money that it frees up on that amount of the budget. I mean, that's 15 years away, but It is something out there. But I think there has been talk, they had a commission, nothing formal has come out for advice for communities. I think to continue to work with the PEC, if you can keep the retirees' health insurance rates low or manageable, that helps also. That really helps tremendously. You know.
Well, I'm pleased to see an allocation to OPEB. It's sorely needed. I hope we can maintain this on an annual level, this and stabilization. I questioned, the point of, why this point in the year. I know Councilor Di Natale has often suggested, as soon as free cash is declared and certified, we then make the allocation. There's certainly an argument to be made for that, and I'd also say, in other years where we're not as where we don't have the funds that we do currently, it may behoove us to do this at the very end of the year to make sure that, if there is an emergency demolition like last year that needs to be done in May, that, we have the available funds to do that, before we make the appropriation. But in any case, I'm pleased to see a commitment from this mayor to put money into OPEB, and look forward to seeing stabilization appear in this committee soon thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councilor Donnelly.
Thank you. You said there's nothing that the state is mandating or recommending at this point, but did you mention Moody's?
They mention it as a concern, the liabilities for both the pension and the health insurance.
But they gave a number, a suggested number, though?
No,
They did not?
no, they didn't.
Okay.
They didn't suggest an amount.
Okay.
But I think the trend, you can see other communities are trending where they put a few $100,000 a year. You want to get over $1 million, and then try to continue with at least a few hundred, $500,000 a year, whatever you can afford. But I mean, there's other areas like stabilization, the pension. The pension is going up. We already know it's going up $900,000 for the next couple years, based on the latest actuary. So that eats up quite a bit.
So the OPEB system has not gotten a lot of attention, as Mr. Saracen said, because the state has mandated a schedule for cities and towns for the pensions. I think we have to be fully funded by law by 2040. So there's already a mandate for that. The OPEB, there is no such mandate, so a lot of communities have kicked the can down the road. What's difficult in this issue is that it hasn't hit us yet, nor will it hit us in the near future, but as Mr. Saracen said earlier, as you go forward down more and more, that liability gets bigger and bigger in terms of what you've got to pay in the current fiscal year. So the City of Fitchburg employs a pay-as-you-go system. They run the numbers for this current fiscal year with the current employees and retirees, and boom, it's like $14 million of health insurance, which is a line item in the budget. That's what we owe to our employees and retirees this fiscal year. And then there's an actuarial report done every 2 years by Stone Consulting that's based on rates and market fluctuations, says, okay, with your current employee base of current employees and retirees, over the next 30 years, this is what that $14 million is going to be in 2018, 2019, and the number goes up to the 128. So we owe $128 million from now until 35 years from now for all of our employees and retirees based on the current rates. And we don't have any money set aside for that $128 million, because every year we run the numbers, and that's the number we put in the budget. So this year it's $14 million. Let's say next year it's $15 million. That's $1 million increase over the last fiscal year. The OPEB trust fund, what communities are doing with that is they're setting monies aside so that as we go forward more and more into the future, we're going to end up having to rely on this account to use it to cover some of this liability, because eventually that $14 million is going to be $20 million. And I don't know about anybody else, but the City of Fitchburg does not have, or I don't foresee, a revenue jump of $6 million in the next 10 years to cover that liability. So we're going to need something on the side like stabilization, although you don't want to use stabilization to balance a budget, but this is specifically for health insurance. You want something in your health insurance account to draw off of, to stave off the increase. If it goes up $1 million, maybe we could take $300,000 out of this account, so it would only cost us $700,000 in new revenue, not $1 million. So it's there as a safety net. It's not going to go away. We owe the 128, and if we don't put any money towards it in the future, we're just going to pay whatever the difference is that year, and it's going to astronomically blow our budget out of the water. Not now, not 5, not even maybe 10 years from now, but in 15 or 20, it's going to nail us. And I think the state hasn't figured out what they're doing yet from the periodicals I've read, because every city and town in the state has a problem. Every city and town in the country has this problem. So we're just trying to be fiscally responsible and ahead of the game. It doesn't hurt to do this, and it will help us down the road, depending what we put in here. But I agree, there needs to be some kind of an idea of what a funding schedule should be. It's difficult to ascertain that because you don't know what your free cash is every year, which is why I've always advocated that whatever the free cash is, within reason, stabilization and OPEB should be the first things we use before we start spending any money on anything else, because those are never going to go away. You need stabilization for a healthy reserve, and you need an OPEB account to be healthy in the event you don't have the money in your current revenue stream to cover the exorbitant health care costs that go up whichever year it happens, or multiple years that it happens. And as Mr. Saracen just mentioned, the pension fund the pension contribution is going to go up $900,000. That's 3/4 of what we gain in new tax revenue through Prop 2.5. So already, before we even do an analysis, 3/4 of our new revenue next year is already taken up by pensions. And so when people ask why we don't have extra services when their taxes go up, because 3/4 of your increase is going to pay for employee benefits. And that's not going to change anytime soon. So it's just a sad reality, but I understand the concerns some people have raised about, well, why are we doing this now if it's not going to affect us now? It's not about now, it's about planning now for future occurrences. We're trying to be proactive here, not reactive. We're trying to stave off the blow as much as we can. We're never going to hit 128 million, but maybe we could get 10 million in there in the next 10 or 15 years. And then we'll need some of that money down the road to stave off these massive increases that are going to come down the pike. So I just think this is a responsible thing to do. The previous mayor recognized that when she created the trust with our support and put the initial 250 in. And it's good to see that this current mayor is following that trend, although, as I said earlier, it would be nice to see some kind of a plan as to what we would like to put into this account going forward.
Motion to approve 28716.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 28716. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.